Look around the next time you're at a car meet. Really look. Past the cars, past the hoods propped open, and the detailing spray catching the light. Look at the people. Because if you know what you're looking for, you'll notice something that nobody ever really talks about. Every single person there is playing a role they didn't audition for. They showed up thinking they came for the cars, and they did. But they also came for something else entirely, something most of them couldn't name if you asked them directly. This is a field guide to that other thing, the hidden psychology underneath the paint. And fair warning, by the end of this, you're going to recognize yourself in at least one of these people. Probably more than one, almost certainly more than you're comfortable admitting. There's always one person who arrived knowing things nobody else knows yet. He has read every forum thread, every owner's club post, every reliability survey published in the last 4 years on at least 3 vehicles he doesn't currently own. He has spreadsheets, actual spreadsheets, with conditional formatting. He has compared insurance brackets across trim levels in multiple states or postcodes. He has a folder on his phone, an actual folder, organized, labeled something modest like research that contains 47 bookmarked articles, 2 saved Reddit threads from 2019 that he revisits periodically just to make sure his thinking hasn't gone stale, and one manufacturer PDF he found on a foreign language website through a search path he can no longer fully reconstruct. Ask him about any car in that parking lot, and he'll give you a briefing so thorough and systematically organized that you'll briefly wonder why this man isn't being paid a consulting fee by someone. Then you'll notice that he drives something sensible and slightly underwhelming, and you'll understand. The research isn't preparation for a purchase. The research is the hobby. The car he actually wants lives in perfect condition inside his head, untouched by depreciation curves, repair bills, or the slow, grinding disappointment of actual ownership. Psychologists have a name for this approach: motivation, the pursuit of a goal that delivers more pleasure in the chasing than it ever would in the catching. He is not stuck. He is not procrastinating. He is living inside the best part of the process. And on some level, he knows it. The spreadsheet will be updated again tonight. Then there's the one whose car you noticed from 3 parking spots away. Not because it's the loudest or the most expensive, because it's the most specifically, deliberately, purposefully modified. The stance is dialed to within 4 millimeters of exactly where he wants it. The wheels are a size and offset combination that nobody else in his immediate circle had the nerve to run. There's a detail on the engine bay that most people walking past will never even see, but that one specific person will, and that one person's reaction, a slow nod, maybe a quiet exhale, is essentially what the entire build has been silently calibrated for over the last 2.5 years. Modification culture gets written off as vanity by people who haven't looked at it carefully enough. What's actually happening is something closer to self-authorship. The car is a medium. The message is, I have a specific vision. I have the patience and discipline to execute it incrementally, and I am not interested in what was already decided for me at the factory. That is not ego. That is identity work, expressed in metal and rubber and wheel spacers instead of words. The people who pursue this most seriously are often surprisingly quiet about it in person. They don't volunteer the build thread. They don't explain the choices unless someone asks. The car does the talking. That's not modesty, that's the whole point. Here's where it gets interesting. Standing maybe 15 feet away from that car, probably moving around it in a slow, deliberate half circle, is a person holding a phone with a gimbal attached to it. He has a small ring light folded into the bag over his shoulder. He has checked his follower count twice in the last 20 minutes, both times without fully meaning to, the way you check the time and somehow still don't know what time it is. He knows the golden hour ends in 34 minutes, and he is already mentally storyboarding the next reel while his eyes are still technically looking at the car in front of him. Now, and this matters, he is also a genuine enthusiast. That part is not performance. The cars that actually make him stop moving, the ones that make him forget about the shot list entirely for 30 seconds, are the ones triggering something real and unplanned in him. But somewhere along the way, the documentation of the experience fused with the experience itself, and he genuinely cannot always tell where one ends and the other begins. Behavioral researchers who study social media use have a term for this context: collapse, the moment when the audience you're performing for becomes impossible to separate from the actual event you're living through. He is not fake. He is navigating something genuinely new, something nobody had to figure out 30 years ago, with no real manual for how to do it without losing something. Somewhere in that same parking lot, probably crouched down, looking at something most people walk past without a second glance, is the person who actually understands how these machines work at a level that is almost uncomfortable to be around if you don't. He's not lecturing anyone. He barely initiates conversation. He speaks when he has something to say and goes quiet when he doesn't, which is a ratio that becomes more impressive the longer you spend time in car communities. But if you get him going, if you ask the right question, the specific one, you will receive an explanation of suspension, geometry, or fuel system behavior or thermal management that will make you quietly reassess every opinion you've ever held about cars. He touched his first engine before he could legally drive one. He learned almost entirely by doing, which means he also learned by breaking things, which means he has a relationship with mechanical failure that the rest of us simply do not have. He doesn't fear the sound a car makes when something's wrong. He reads it. That specific quiet confidence, the kind that doesn't require an audience or a reaction, is what happens when expertise is built entirely through embodied experience rather than content consumption. It looks like indifference from the outside. It is almost the opposite. Now here's the one that requires the most careful reading, because he is routinely misread. The car he brought looks almost completely stock. That is not an oversight, and it is not a budget limitation. He has been offered modifications. He has been shown tasteful builds that cost real money and look genuinely impressive, and he has nodded politely and remained entirely, unmovably uninterested. What he is protecting is something specific: the integrity of an original vision that he did not create but has chosen to steward. He believes, and this belief is deeply held and has survived a significant amount of social pressure from people in this exact parking lot, that the engineers and designers who produced this car made considered decisions that deserve to be honored rather than revised. That modifying it is less like self-expression and more like editing someone else's sentence in the middle of their paragraph. Call it purism, call it conservatism, call it stubbornness if you want, but recognize that underneath it is a coherent and defensible aesthetic philosophy that most people hold firmly in at least one area of their life. He just holds it about cars, and he holds it publicly. The tension between him and the modifier is one of the oldest arguments in creative culture: faithful interpretation versus personal expression. It's the same argument that happens in music and architecture and restoration in film. Neither of them is wrong. They are just answering different questions about what it means to own something. The next person is the one you catch standing in front of a specific car for slightly longer than the situation seems to call for, with an expression that is not entirely about the car, and both of you know it. He grew up around one of these, or his father had one, parked in a driveway he can still picture with a clarity that surprises him sometimes. Or his older brother drove him somewhere important in one, back when that brother seemed like the biggest person in the world and school was a long time ago and the future was still entirely hypothetical. Nostalgia is not a simple or soft emotion. Neuroscience has spent decades trying to fully map what it actually does, and the short version is this: we don't remember the past, we remember how we felt inside it. And certain physical objects can trigger that feeling with a precision that almost nothing else available to us in the physical world can replicate. Cars are extraordinarily effective at this. A specific dashboard shape, a particular exhaust note at a particular RPM range. The exact sound a door makes when it closes, a sound that simply does not exist in cars made after a certain year. He's not being sentimental in a soft or embarrassing way. He is being reconnected to a version of himself that he didn't know he was still carrying around. That is a genuinely profound thing to experience in a parking lot on a Saturday morning, surrounded by strangers who would understand completely if he tried to explain it. Someone nearby is hovering at the edge of a conversation they're not fully inside yet. Their car is clean, relatively new, maybe slightly too new for the crowd. They've watched a significant number of videos, read a reasonable amount, and until very recently, everything they understood about cars lived entirely inside a screen. Now it's all around them in 3 dimensions, and it's simultaneously more and less overwhelming than they expected. The newcomer to any enthusiast community occupies a psychologically exposed position. They want to belong, they don't yet know the unwritten rules, and every interaction is happening against a low-level background frequency of, am I doing this right? Do I belong here? Can they tell? The interesting thing about car meet culture specifically is that most of these communities absorb newcomers considerably better than their reputation suggests. Not always, not everywhere, but the shared object of enthusiasm tends to function as a remarkably efficient social bridge. Ask almost anyone how they found their way into their particular corner of car culture, and the story will involve one specific person who treated them like they already belonged before they technically did. That first person is consistently underrated. The newcomer standing at the edge of this conversation will become that person for someone else in a few years, without planning to, without even noticing when it happens. And then there's the one you almost missed, parked slightly apart from the main cluster, at an angle that suggests it was deliberate. The car is extraordinary in a way that takes a moment to fully process the kind of car where you find yourself walking toward it before you've consciously decided to move, the way you move toward a sound before you've identified it. The person standing next to it is having one conversation with one other person, unhurried, and the body language of both of them suggests this particular conversation has happened in various forms about 1,000 times and is still worth having, as long as it's with someone who actually gets it. He doesn't need the group, he doesn't need the attention, and this is evident in a way that is completely devoid of performance or posturing. He came here exactly like every other person in this parking lot came here, because the alternative was sitting somewhere else knowing that this was happening and choosing not to be part of it. And that particular alternative, the awareness of something like this existing nearby without being inside it, is something he has never once been willing to accept. That impulse, that specific gravity of shared enthusiasm, is the thing that actually explains every single person in this field guide. The researcher living inside his own perfect version of a car he may never buy, the builder for whom every choice was a sentence in a longer statement, the one with the gimbal, negotiating in real time between the life he's living and the one he's documenting, the mechanic who learned everything with his hands and carries that knowledge quietly, the purist drawing a line that most people think is arbitrary and that he knows is anything but, the one standing in front of a car that is also a door back to somewhere. The newcomer learning the language. The silent one, parked slightly apart, in a car that required no explanation. None of them came for the cars. Not really. Not at the deepest level. They came because caring about something with this degree of specificity, knowing it, thinking about it, arguing about it with strangers who become friends through the argument is increasingly rare in adult life, and finding other people who care about the same thing with the same intensity is rarer still. The cars are the reason, the people are the point. The slightly remarkable thing, the thing nobody ever quite says out loud, is that everyone standing in that parking lot understands this perfectly and would struggle to explain it to anyone who wasn't already there.